through a computer and move with a wheelchair, as his awareness has fully returned. When Ashton Kutcher was 13, he almost committed suicide by jumping off a hospital roof. His twin brother with cerebral palsy had only hours to live if he didn't get a heart transplant, so Ashton wanted to give him his. He was saved when his father and a nurse informed him that his brother had just received a donor. This is the gravestone of Elijah Bond, the man who patented the Ouija board. In 1871, a man survived the fire and sinking of a ship, but it gave him PTSD. 41 years later, he was finally able to overcome his fear and sail again, only to die in the sinking of that new ship, called the Titanic. An Indian farmer named Sanju Bhagat lived for 36 years looking like he was pregnant. But one day he was rushed to the hospital because he was having trouble breathing. Doctors initially assumed that a tumor was growing inside his abdomen, but upon operating, they saw something that they had never seen before. They realized that he must have absorbed his twin in the womb and had been carrying it around for 36 years. This is an extremely rare condition called fetus in fetu, where one twin has been absorbed but continues to leach on the host's blood supply and nutrition. The fetus had grown teeth, hair, limbs, and even genitalia. The parasitic twin was eventually removed and Sanju made a full recovery. In 2020, Canadian actor Ryan Grantham, known for his roles in Riverdale and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, shot and killed his 64-year-old mother while she was playing piano in their home, then filmed the aftermath on a GoPro. Grantham then packed his car with guns, ammunition, Molotov cocktails, and a map to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's residence, allegedly planning to assassinate him. But instead, he drove to a police station and turned himself in. During the trial, it was revealed that Grantham was suffering from severe depression and suicidal thoughts. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole in 14 years. In 1988, expert skydiver Ivan McGuire boarded a plane in North Carolina to film a routine jump from 10,000 feet. With over 800 jumps under his belt, he was calm, confident, and fully focused on capturing the perfect footage. His helmet camera recorded everything, his smooth exit from the plane, the free fall, and the other jumpers floating below. But partway through the descent, McGuire began frantically patting his back, expressing confusion that quickly turned to panic. Just seconds before impact, his voice can be heard yelling, "Oh my God, no!" He was apparently so focused on filming that he had jumped without a parachute. In a 1974 art performance, Marina Abramovich told visitors she wouldn't move for 6 hours no matter what they did to her. She placed 72 items on a table and invited people to use them on her however they pleased with no punishment. There were objects for pleasure including a rose, perfume, and wine, as well as objects for pain including scissors, a whip, and a loaded gun. Visitors were gentle to begin with, but gradually got more aggressive as they became comfortable. Within 3 hours, all of her clothes had been completely cut off, and some people even started slicing her skin. She was sexually assaulted various times and had rose thorns stuck in her abdomen. One person even held the gun to her head until someone else took it away. Afterwards, Abramovich said, "If you leave it up to the audience, they can kill you." Baby Molly Gibson was born in October of 2020, but she was technically 27 years old at her birth, just 2 years younger than her mom. Her embryo was donated in 1992 and stored in a liquid nitrogen tank until she was adopted in 2020 for in vitro fertilization. In 1994, a Russian pilot allowed his 16-year-old son to sit at the controls of the plane. But his son accidentally disabled the autopilot, crashing the plane and killing all 75 passengers on board. From the time of its discovery to its demotion, Pluto didn't even make one full revolution around the sun. If you hit someone with your car in China, you must pay for their medical care for the rest of their life. But if you kill someone with your car, you only have to pay a one-time fee. For this reason, it's common for people to go back and kill someone they accidentally hit. Bullets fired into the air usually fall back down at terminal velocity. As a result, there have been thousands of deaths due to celebratory gunfire. For example, in 2003, more than 20 people were killed by celebratory gunfire in Iraq following the deaths of Saddam Hussein's 2 sons. Chemical castration is mandatory in Florida and California for pedophiles convicted of their second offense. During a 2019 expedition to the deepest point in the ocean, explorers found a plastic bag and candy wrappers, indicating that plastic pollution hasn't spared even the most remote corners of the ocean. This elderly woman from Brooklyn is a hoarder who also happens to be legally blind. At some point in the 1990s, her son who lived in the house disappeared. In 2016, his fully clothed skeleton was found in a room filled with garbage. She had been living with his corpse for 20 years. These are just some of the reasons why people used to be committed to mental asylums. In 2006, 5-year-old Robert Turner called 911 after his mother collapsed in her bedroom. But the operator hung up after asking him to put an adult on the phone and assuming it was a prank. 3 hours later, he called 911 again and another operator told him to stop prank calling. This time, police were sent to the home where they found that the mother of 10 had died from a heart attack. In August of 1864, President Lincoln lost his hat when his horse was startled by a loud noise. The hat was recovered later with a bullet hole through the crown. The loud noise was apparently an assassination attempt by an unknown sniper. Ella Harper was born with an extremely rare genetic condition that curved her knees in the opposite direction. She was popular in sideshows and was known as Camel Girl because she preferred to walk on all fours. In 2009, Moscow native Julia Popova was stabbed in the neck by a mugger. But she was in so much shock that she walked home without even realizing that the knife was embedded in her, just millimeters from her spinal cord. She spent over an hour with the blade in her back before she went to the hospital. Regarded as one of the greatest military leaders of all time. However, locals urged the Soviets not to do so since it was believed that opening the tomb would curse the world. This was mainly due to the inscription on his tomb which read, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." And inside his casket, there was another mysterious note that read, "Whoever disturbs my tomb will unleash an invader more terrible than I." But despite the warnings, Joseph Stalin ordered for Tamerlane's body to be exhumed. Just 3 days later, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded the Soviet Union. Extra Morbid Facts, Part 8. In 2018, Tyrone Johnson snapped during a fight with his girlfriend Stephanie Willis after she allegedly mocked him over his son's suicide. He shot her in the bedroom, then hunted down her 10-year-old son Ricky, who was hiding under his bed. The boys' room became a scene of horror, with toys scattered, shell casings on the floor, and blood pooling from beneath his bed. In 2022, Johnson was sentenced to death for the killings. In October of 2024, a 67-year-old man from Arkansas was awaiting trial for disgusting crimes against a 14-year-old girl. Despite a no-contact order, he allegedly continued to pursue her, and one night the girl's father discovered her inside a vehicle with him. In the heat of that confrontation, the father pulled out a gun and fatally shot the predator right in front of his daughter. He's since been charged with first-degree murder. At the height of his YouTube and FaZe Clan fame, Norden Chat, aka FaZe Rain, spiraled into a drug addiction so destructive that millions of fans watched him unravel in real time. What began with casually showing off painkillers to his audience escalated to him swallowing alarming amounts of pills on stream, bragging about it while his body silently deteriorated. By 2020, Rain was suffering seizures, collapsing, and eventually lost the ability to walk. Doctors warned the nerve damage in his legs might be permanent, leaving him in a wheelchair and forcing him into grueling therapy. His addiction wrecked friendships, destroyed his career, and turned a gaming star into a cautionary tale as fans saw him posting from hospital beds and fighting through constant pain. But after years of setbacks and near-death lows, he finally clawed his way back to sobriety. Rain can now walk again, is slowly attempting to rebuild his career, and now shares his harrowing story as a warning about how fast addiction can take everything. Patrice O'Neal was a renowned stand-up comedian known for his sharp, unfiltered style on stage and appearances on Chappelle's Show, Opie and Anthony, and the Comedy Central roasts. He first discovered he had diabetes after a girlfriend told him his urine tasted like birthday cake, prompting him to get tested. The disease slowly wore him down over the years until in October of 2011, he suffered a massive stroke. Just a month later, at 41 years old, he died from complications, with his final television appearance being the roast of Charlie Sheen. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, the heat was so intense it didn't just kill people. It completely warped human remains in ways rarely seen throughout history. In Herculaneum, archaeologists discovered the body of a young man lying face down on a wooden bed whose brain had literally been turned into glass. What you're looking at in this photo is brain tissue that was flash heated to nearly 1,000 degrees before cooling so rapidly it vitrified, leaving behind a shiny glass-like substance. It remains one of the only known cases of a human brain preserved through such a gruesome transformation. If Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin got stuck on the moon, the official policy was to cut off communication and let them slowly suffocate in silence. President Nixon even had a speech prepared in case this happened. The speech read, quote, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace." Actor Bela Lugosi famously played Count Dracula in the 1931 film. As per his request, he was dressed in vampire clothing during his open casket funeral in 1956. Chad Vera was a priest who started the very first suicide hotline in 1953. He decided to start it after directing a funeral for a girl who took her own life when she had her first period. She believed she had contracted an STD and had no one to talk to reassure her. In 2008, 23-year-old Rachel Hoffman was arrested for possession of marijuana and was facing 4 years in prison. Police told her that the only way to get out of the prison time was to become a confidential informant. She agreed, and her first undercover drug purchase would have been one of the biggest in Florida history. Police told her to buy 1,500 pills as well as a gun from some drug dealers. But the dealers found a wire in her purse and she was murdered with the gun that she was buying. Before World War II, Janusz Korczak ran an orphanage in Warsaw, Poland. During the Holocaust, Nazi soldiers came to his orphanage to take all 192 children to an extermination camp. Korczak was offered his freedom but refused to abandon the children. Instead, he boarded the train with them and was never seen nor heard from again. After retiring from the NFL in 1990, Hall of Famer Mike Webster's life unraveled into a spiral of bizarre and disturbing behavior. Once celebrated as the Iron Man of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he spent his final years homeless or sleeping in his pickup truck, suffering crushing headaches, dementia, and paranoia. Friends and family later described shocking habits, urinating in his own oven, shocking himself with a taser just to fall asleep, and gluing his decaying teeth back together. At one point, he even carried around a briefcase filled with superglue, painkillers, and duct tape, using them as makeshift tools. In 2014, comedian Tracy Morgan was critically injured in a car crash on the New Jersey Turnpike when a Walmart tractor-trailer suddenly slammed into his limo van. The collision killed his close friend and fellow comedian James McNair and left Morgan with a broken femur, broken ribs, broken nose, and a traumatic brain injury. Doctors initially feared he might not survive, and he remained in a coma for over a week. The truck driver had reportedly been awake for more than 24 hours, prompting Morgan to sue Walmart for negligence. The company ultimately settled the lawsuit outside of court, and Tracy has publicly forgiven the driver. In 1980, a man named John Burgess, who had lost over $750,000 while gambling, attempted to extort money from Harvey's Resort Hotel in Nevada by planting one of the most sophisticated homemade bombs the FBI had ever seen. Disguised as a copy machine and weighing over 1,000 pounds, the device was placed on the second floor of the casino along with a ransom note demanding $3 million. The FBI evacuated the building and spent hours trying to disarm the bomb, but when they attempted to disable it using a controlled charge, the entire device detonated. The explosion damaged much of the building and caused over $18 million in damage, but miraculously no one was killed. Burgess was later arrested, convicted, and died while in prison. Ted Cassidy, best known for playing Lurch in the original Addams Family, was 6 feet 9 inches tall. He died from a botched surgery to remove a tumor from his heart, which resulted from the condition of acromegaly that caused his iconic voice, facial structure, and towering height. After leasing the World Trade Center just weeks before 9/11, Larry Silverstein filed an insurance claim arguing that the attacks on the Twin Towers constituted 2 separate terrorist events, entitling him to double the $3.5 billion per occurrence payout. The case went to court, where the court agreed with Silverstein for 9 of the 20 insurance companies, forcing them to pay double. In total, Silverstein received around $4.55 billion for the collapse of the World Trade Center. In 1991, 5 young boys vanished while searching for salamander eggs on a mountain in South Korea, earning them the nickname the Frog Boys. Despite a massive nationwide search, their remains weren't discovered until 2002, just a few miles from where they disappeared. Initially ruled as deaths by exposure, an autopsy revealed that 4 boys had suffered blunt force trauma to the head and 1 had a gunshot wound. Even more unsettling, their clothes were found tied together with bullets wrapped in them. The site was suspiciously close to a military training zone, but police refused to investigate any military involvement. No one has been held accountable to this day. At SummerSlam 1997, Stone Cold Steve Austin suffered a serious neck injury after Owen Hart botched a reverse piledriver, slamming Austin's head directly into the mat. The impact caused a bruised spinal cord and temporary paralysis, leaving Austin unable to move. He immediately told Hart, "Don't touch me, I can't move," and relayed the same to the referee, who signaled Owen to stall for time. Austin eventually regained just enough movement to finish the match with a weak roll-up. Though he continued wrestling, the injury forced Austin. Shockingly, just a year later in 1998, Owen Hart botched another piledriver, this time on Dan Severn during a live episode of Raw, causing another serious neck injury that briefly left Severn unable to move. The back-to-back incidents helped solidify the piledriver's reputation as one of wrestling's most dangerous moves and led to stricter safety protocols in the WWE. In 2006, Ray Rivera vanished after receiving a sudden phone call and rushing out of his Baltimore home. Over a week later, his body was found in a locked conference room at the Belvedere Hotel, having somehow crashed through the roof from above. The hole he fell through was bizarrely placed, far too distant from any ledge to be reached by a typical jump, leading some to believe he may have been thrown off the roof or pushed from a higher level of the building. Even stranger, a cryptic note filled with movie references and secret society names was discovered taped behind his computer. The eerie case still remains officially unsolved. Just recently, paranormal investigator Dan Rivera was found dead in his hotel room while on the Devils on the Run tour in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Best known for touring with the infamous Annabelle doll from The Conjuring, the 54-year-old had spent years investigating haunted locations and was a prominent figure in the New England Society for Psychic Research. His sudden death with no signs of foul play has fueled eerie speculation, given his close proximity to one of the world's most notorious possessed objects. As of now, the cause of death remains unknown, as Rivera's mysterious end has only deepened the legend surrounding Annabelle. In 2001, an 8-year-old boy named Jesse Arbogast was attacked by a 7-foot bull shark while he was standing in knee-deep water near Pensacola, Florida. The shark had bitten off one of Jesse's arms and part of his thigh before his uncle pulled it away and wrestled it to shore. After a park ranger shot the shark in the head, Jesse's uncle retrieved the severed arm, put it on ice, and drove it to the hospital where it was successfully reattached. Morticians often use these spiky contacts to keep the eyes of the dead closed during funeral viewings. In the 1980s, a man with severe OCD shot himself in the head in an attempt to commit suicide. Instead of killing him, the bullet destroyed the part of his brain that was responsible for his OCD, and he went on to become a straight-A college student 5 years later. Photo of 2 tourists posing inside the Claw of Death at Chernobyl, a massive crane used to scoop up chunks of radioactive reactor core after the 1986 meltdown. The machine is still so contaminated that standing near it can deliver radiation doses dozens of times higher than a chest X-ray, and its rusted frame is coated in radioactive dust that can cling to hair, skin, or clothing. While a brief picture likely won't cause immediate sickness, the exposure adds to long-term cancer risk, and any contamination they brought home could be far deadlier. It remains one of the most dangerously toxic relics of the exclusion zone, yet people still climb inside it for a photo op. In 2000, a Tahitian man named Fidel Maruhi pulled off one of the most unlikely survivals in aviation history. He stowed away in the wheel well of a Boeing 747 bound for Los Angeles. For 7.5 hours, he endured sub-zero temperatures and near total lack of oxygen, and when rescuers found him, his core body temperature was just 79 degrees Fahrenheit, a level usually considered fatal. But against all odds, he lived, and when asked why he'd risk such a death-defying stunt, he explained his dream was to reach France simply so he could shake hands with soccer legend Zinedine Zidane. For millions of children in the 1990s, Barney the dinosaur embodied love and innocence, but the man inside the costume, David Joyner, went down a radically different path after leaving the show. Joyner reinvented himself as a tantric sex therapist, charging clients $350 for 3 to 4 hour energy sessions that involved ritual baths, meditation, and full sexual contact. He openly admitted that helping women reach orgasm was part of his practice, describing it as a way to release blocked energy. In interviews, Joyner even gave credit to his years actors as Barney for preparing him for this role, saying the same ability to project love in a purple dinosaur suit helped him guide clients through intimate spiritual healing. Mike Tyson has openly admitted that he often had sex shortly before his fights, sometimes immediately before stepping into the ring. He explained he would bang groupies in the bathrooms and locker rooms to calm him down and apparently prevent him from murdering his opponent during the fight. At the 2004 Athens Olympics, organizers handed out 130,000 free condoms to athletes, but the supply ran out within days, forcing a rush order of 20,000 more. That record was shattered in Rio 2016, where a staggering 450,000 condoms were distributed within just 2 weeks, cementing the Olympic Games' reputation as the world's biggest orgy. In 2017, a billionaire from Brazil announced that he was gonna bury his Bentley for his afterlife. After receiving a lot of online hate for his wasteful decision, he revealed that it was simply a publicity stunt for organ donations. He said people bury things that are much more valuable than cars and nobody seems to care. Patty Mallet became pregnant at age 17 and was pressured by multiple people to abort the baby, but she refused. That baby was Justin Bieber. The Titanic fired 8 emergency flares before it sank. A ship in the area saw the flares and that the boat looked uneven in the water. But the captain didn't believe that the rockets were fired in distress, so he didn't take action. If he had, all of the Titanic's passengers could have been rescued, but instead help didn't arrive for more than 2 hours. In 1984, comedian Tommy Cooper died of a heart attack while performing live on stage. Thinking it was all part of the show, the audience continued to laugh and clap as the man was gasping for air. In 1300 BC, Egyptian King Meneptah defeated the Libyans in battle. To prove of his triumph, he brought back 6,000 tan bananas that he cut off of opposing soldiers. When a very tall man dies and can't afford a custom coffin, the undertaker will often chop off his feet and place them beside his legs. The family doesn't notice because only the top half of the coffin is open during the funeral. In 2015, a woman claimed that she could smell Parkinson's disease. To test this, doctors gave her 12 shirts to smell and 6 of them were from Parkinson's patients. She correctly identified the 6 shirts but also chose one from the control group. 8 months later, that person was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Amid the darkest day in modern history, these are the miracles of 9/11 that still leave people speechless. After nearly 27 hours buried under debris, Janelle Guzman McMillan, an office worker in the North Tower, was the last person rescued alive from Ground Zero. Pinned under concrete with only a single hand free, she said she felt someone holding it and telling her that she would be okay. When rescuers finally pulled her out, they all swore that none of them had touched her hand. In the North Tower's Stairwell B, a group of 16 firefighters, a police officer, and a civilian survived the entire collapse, entombed in a concrete pocket while everything around them was pulverized. They were dug out hours later still alive in what rescuers called a miracle. One survivor, Stanley Premnath, was literally looking at the nose of Flight 175 as it struck the South Tower. His office was completely shredded, but he survived by diving under his desk. He was later pulled from the rubble by another worker, both escaping down the stairwell before the building collapsed. A Port Authority worker named Pasquale Buzelli was on the 22nd floor of the North Tower when it suddenly collapsed beneath him. But instead of being crushed, he was carried down with the debris, riding it like a wave. He woke up hours later on top of a pile of rubble with only a broken ankle, later nicknamed the 9/11 Surfer. A guide dog named Roselle led a group of people, including her blind owner, down 78 flights of stairs before the North Tower collapsed. She stopped only once to give kisses to a woman who was having a panic attack. This is a comparison of a pug in 1880 versus what the breed looks like today. The pug was selectively bred to feature an extremely flat face, which has contributed to severe breathing difficulties as well as eye problems in many of these dogs. If a person dies on a plane during a flight, their body is typically moved to an empty first-class seat until the plane lands. After the Titanic disaster, the U.S. Congress passed a law requiring passenger vessels to carry more lifeboats. But the added weight made one ship called the SS Eastland too top-heavy. In 1915, the ship capsized before even leaving the dock, killing 844 people. When Ben Franklin's London home was renovated in 1998, 15 human bodies, including 6 children, were discovered in the basement. Archaeologists agree that they were buried at the same time Franklin had been living in the home. While police initially thought it was the work of a serial killer, the bodies were likely stolen by his friend William Hewson so that he could study anatomy. When Joseph Stalin was dying, his private physician was not available. This is because he was already being tortured in the KGB headquarters for suggesting that Stalin get more bed rest. A Thai woman once accidentally slipped on mud, grabbed a naked live wire, and was electrocuted to death. After the funeral, her sister was showing her neighbors how the accident happened. Suddenly, she herself slipped, grabbed the same live wire, and was also electrocuted to death. In 1978, San Francisco was left shaken when disgruntled former city supervisor Dan White snuck into City Hall through a basement window and gunned down Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk in cold blood. At trial, prosecutors expected an easy murder conviction, but White's lawyers argued that he was deeply depressed, pointing to drastic lifestyle changes, including a diet of sugary junk food like Twinkies, as proof of his unraveling mental state. The bizarre argument, later mocked as the Twinkie defense, convinced jurors to downgrade his charges from murder to voluntary manslaughter. White was sentenced to just over 7 years, but walked free after barely serving 5. The shocking leniency sparked outrage across San Francisco, fueling the violent White Night riots and leaving the city completely haunted by the fact that the man who assassinated both its mayor and his supervisor spent less time in prison than many would serve for petty crimes. In 2007, NASA astronaut Lisa Nowak made headlines for one of the strangest scandals in space history. Obsessed with her ex-boyfriend's new partner, Lisa drove 900